Welcome, welcome. Good to have you all here with us. We have some folks whose audio is joining. Good afternoon. We are glad to have you all here with us today. I'd like to start just by getting to know who's on the call. So there's too many of us to unmute, but we can utilize that chat function. So down on your toolbar, I invite you to, if you're able, to send in your name. If it's different than the name that's listed on your Zoom account, what city you're calling from today, and your experience with Just Faith Ministry. So it might be, my name's Leela. I am in Richmond, Virginia, and I have been doing programs since 2014. So I might say something like that. So feel free to take a moment down there in the chat and send a message saying hi to everybody on the call. Once you've had a chance to type into the chat, feel free to read through and see other folks here, and then take a moment to grab a pen and a piece of paper. Jimmy, welcome. If you are not in a place where you have a pen and a paper, you can use your phone or just use your own mind for the activity. But if you are in a space to grab a pen and a paper or something that you can write on, you'll need that later in our webinar today. Welcome, Shirley. Welcome, Chris. All right, looks like we're spanning the coast from Virginia to California. Awesome. Good to have everyone here today. Feel free to keep sending those in the chat. My name is Leela Oakley. I am the Outreach and Engagement Manager at Just Faith Ministries, and based on your names and faces, I think I've connected with almost all of you. So it's good to see you all here today. We are going to be talking about our upcoming program release. We're going to be talking about the program we're about to release, Just Action, how to advocate and mobilize for justice. We're going to talk through the details of that program and give you tips about how you could start using that program in your church, your organizations, or your area. And then we're going to end, before the Q&A, we're going to end with a little bit of a experimental introduction to the program. So we're going to lead you through an activity that's actually part of the program itself. As many of you know, Just Faith Ministries is a national organization that creates transformative programs that inspire action to address root causes of injustice while serving in love. And we hope that this program will be a really effective and engaging tool to bring about that mission in your local communities. We are going to start our time today with prayer. And so I'm going to share my screen with you all and share this with you. Feel free to join me in prayer, however that might look for you. One moment while it loads. This prayer is titled A Litany of Lament for Liberation by Reverend Kristen Pitts. Oh God, who am I in both awe and disgust? I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired.
I am tired of injustice. We are tired of injustice and waiting for justice to be actualized, while the ability for flourishing is with the handful, for the handful, and by the handful. Oh God, how long shall we cry for help and you not listen?
Jesus did not come to bring peace, but a sword. And may peace never come until justice is actualized. Expose to everyone injustice that is both overt and covert. Then make it so that inequity may never be hidden again. But instead, call out from every rooftop, mountaintop, valley, and gutter.
Invigorate us with truth, power, mercy, and love, and the wisdom to know how to allow these tools to inform our actions. In our struggle against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness, against spiritual wickedness in high places, remind us that we have nothing to lose but our chains.
Make it evident that no one is free until everyone is free. So when I liberate myself, I liberate others. May my lamenting liberate me.
May our lamenting liberate us. May our acknowledgement of our internalized oppression, complicity, and direct harm liberate us. May our unlearning of white supremacy and its harmful byproducts liberate us. May our labor liberate us.
May I hold myself accountable. May we hold each other accountable. And may we be willing to be transformed in the doing of this work. Amen. Again, it's good to gather here with you all this afternoon. Today, we're going to be talking about just action, but I wanted for a moment just to throw up on the slide the other programs that Just Faith Ministries offers. So if you're interested in learning more about any of our offerings, I'd invite you to visit our website and then to reach out to me directly. I'm always happy to talk through programs and what program might be a good fit for your community. So don't hesitate to reach out after the webinar today or in the coming weeks if you'd like to learn more about any of these. With that, I will turn it to Kristen, let Kristen introduce herself and jump into the program material.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be with you here today. And I'm just thrilled to be telling you a little bit about Just Action, how to advocate and mobilize for justice, which we are officially launching on Monday. Yay. We've been working on this project for a long time, and I'm just really excited to share it with you. We couldn't have done it without the help of our consultants, particularly Kristen Pitts, who wrote the prayer that you heard at the very beginning. And it's a really different program from any of our other programs. The reason that we wrote this is really because if there is a measure of our quote unquote success as an organization, it's whether and how people are taking faith-filled action as a result of their program experience and their community experience with us as Just Faith Ministries. So we really wanted to inspire and equip people, give them tools from their faith and tools from people who are really great at making change and working for justice. We wanted to inspire and equip people to really take action. So that's what this program's about. It's a skills-based program, and so it's very practical. It guides small groups, and as it says here, taking sustainable, effective, and faith-filled action for justice. Groups start out with a discernment retreat in which they discern a particular justice concern that they would like to address together as they learn these tools for action, advocacy, and organizing. For example, that might be something like maybe you're meeting with a group who is coming out of the racial justice series, and there's a particular racial justice concern that you would like to address. This retreat will guide you in discerning what that issue is. Or maybe you are really passionate about eco-justice and you want to work with, maybe there's been a chemical spill, for example, in your area, or there's some pollutants in your watershed, and you really want to work on this issue. This is the perfect program for you because you'll discern a topic and work on a plan for taking action together. And throughout the program, folks will learn how to stand in solidarity with people who are really affected by this issue. And you'll learn how to mobilize others for action. Maybe that's your church community, really be thinking about how to get other people involved in this. Or maybe it's just people in your communities in general. So thinking about how to mobilize people for action and also advocate effectively for lasting change, thinking about the people who are in those decision-making positions who have the power to create change, and how we can work with them to create the changes that we need to see in order to seek justice. So that's just an outline of the program. And in the next slide, I'll take you through, you'll see here the goals. The first goal is to deepen our understanding of biblical justice. As I'll explain a little bit later, we have a book from the Poor People's Campaign, written by organizers who are working with William Barber and the Poor People's Campaign. I don't know if anybody's heard the Poor People's Campaign before. Yeah, see some hands. Yeah, some beautiful meditations that connect theology to the work of action, organizing, and advocacy. The second goal is to equip folks to take effective and sustainable action that really reflects the values of our faith. Faith-rooted organizing looks a little bit different from organizing, outside of that. So we really explore and dig in deep of how the example of Jesus in our Christian tradition calls us to engage in this work. The next goal is to guide the group in creating an achievable and time-bound plan of action, rather than just something that's, nebulous, so maybe something that we say we're going to do down the road, but we just have a hard time getting started. That we spend a lot of time creating goals that are achievable and are actionable. And this is something that the group will commit 1 to 3 months to carrying out after session 8. That said, you'll go ahead and get started on a lot of those steps during the program itself, so you'll already have some momentum going. The next goal is to introduce principles for working in solidarity with the communities experiencing the effects of injustice. This is so important. We can, as our one of our consultants, Vicki Lott, always says, nothing about us without us. We need to be working in solidarity with folks who are affected by injustice, because most of the time they have the wisdom for how to create change that really is beneficial and liberatory to us all, rather than perpetuating harm. And the last goal is to provide tools for mobilizing churches and communities for action. And I'm thinking particularly this might be a great program for churches who are maybe interested in getting involved in their communities, but just really are having a hard time taking that step from getting out of the pews and into the world and taking action based on the principles of their faith. So those are our goals. In the session outline, I'll just try to walk you briefly through. There's so much I want to say about this program, so I'll try to be succinct. As I mentioned, we start out with the discernment retreat, where the group discerns an issue that they'll work on together. Session 1, storytelling is so crucial, both telling our own stories and how we connect to the concern that we're seeking to address, and also hearing the stories of people who are affected by injustice. So we have a storytelling workshop in session 1. Session 2 talks a little bit about power, and one of the things we look at with power is how Dr. King thought about the concept of power. There's a lot of misconceptions around that. And understanding how power operates is really important when it comes to creating effective change, especially if we're going to talk about changing policies and even laws that affect us all. Then we have to talk about how power operates. Session 3, inspired by consultant Dr. Vicki Lott, nothing about us without us. The group will hear from a guest speaker who has been ideally somebody who is working on this issue and maybe is a leader within a community affected by the concern the group is seeking to address. Note the guest speaker and immersion experience comes very early in this program, and a lot of that is because we want this work to be grounded in solidarity with folks affected by injustice, and also partnership with people who are already doing this work, so that we don't reinvent the wheel. So that's a little bit why those opportunities are earlier on. So session 3, you hear from the guest speaker, and then after that is the immersion experience, where folks have a chance to connect with a group or an organization who is already involved in this work in some way, to learn from them and to explore ways to partner with them. And this is kind of an opportunity to practice something that's called in organizing world a research visit, where we're really learning from the work that other people are doing. Session 4, a lot of organizers say that there are really 2 ways to make change. That change happens is either through organized people or it's through organized money. And if you don't have the financial resources to make change, that's why building our base, people power, is so crucial. And so we spend some time learning about how we can organize people, and so that we can join voices with those who are crying out for justice and create change more effectively. Session 5 is about community care. How do we care for one another in this really difficult work? Self-care is really important, but in something that, has become more, and rightly so, more vocalized in our present day society. But community care is also really important, especially if we're working in areas where maybe our governments or in institutions have long ignored. Communities are needing to find ways to care for themselves, because it's going to be a while before, as we're working for government policies and institutional policies that will respond to the real needs and rights of people, we'll need to find ways to care for one another. And while that's happening. Session 7 gets into looks at nonviolent direct action in some really creative way, expands how we think about nonviolent direct action and the legacy of the civil rights movement, and helps folks explore some really creative and fun and sometimes artistic tactics for creating change that can be intense, and it can be joyful, it can be humorous, incorporating art and poetry, spoken word. And then session 8, all along, the group will have been planning their action steps for how they will take action together as a group after the program. And so session 8 is really solidifying that plan and ensuring that those next steps are organized and folks are ready to go and to begin taking action. And a little bit about the post-program. One of the things that makes this program a little bit different is it's actually asking a lot from participants. And part of that is because if we want people to really commit this time to taking action, as I mentioned, we do ask for folks when they're signing up for this program to commit to 1 to 3 months of carrying out those plans that the group discerned together. And this group can start with a really simple, achievable goal that it seems like really is clear and tangible. And then after they spend that 1 to 3 months together, that ideally after they've had some momentum of achieving the goal that they set out on, eventually the momentum kind of picks up and they can take on new and bigger goals and build more of a base and incorporate more people into working for justice alongside one another. So that is our session outline. And as I mentioned, one of our books comes from organizers, is a series of devotions from reflections from the Poor People's Campaign. We Cry Justice, Reading the Bible with the Poor People's Campaign. And the other book is called The Climate Resistance Handbook by Daniel Hunter. Even though this book specifically uses climate as an example, it's an extremely practical book that walks people through tangible ways, the tangible steps that they can take to be really effective in their organizing. It's fabulous. So I hope that you'll find it as compelling and practical as we have. And again, as I said, this program, it does ask, it asks a lot from participants, partly because we want to give people the tools for being as effective as they can in their work. So this program is really ideal for groups who have completed another Just Faith Ministries program together, and or share an interest in a particular justice concern, and or live in the same town or city. Having at least one of these things in common will make it easier to discern a justice concern and work together for change. And the second thing is that we ask that folks can commit to carrying out a 1 to 3 month action plan after the program is finished. And the third thing is that folks are really serious. Like, it can be it's a great thing to want to read books and to have conversations with one another about current day issues. That's so important. But it takes some guts to get off the couch and to stand up and walk out the church doors and into the world. And so we ask that everybody who signs up for this is ready to really take action and get to work, be willing to make some mistakes and learn from them, and also be ready for the work of liberation. There's nothing like it. And there's really, to me, there's something more spiritual than working alongside folks who have experienced injustice to work together for the kingdom of God. So And I think I will, yes, that is all of my section. So I'll turn it over to Leela.
Great, thank you, Kristen. I'm going to talk through a little bit about what you can expect in the program and how to get started. I do want to make y'all aware of the fact that we will do a Q&A at the end. So if you have a question right now that's on your mind after Kristen's sharing, feel free to send that to me directly to me via the chat, or you can write it down and share it later. So what to expect? There is, as Kristen said, a discernment retreat for this program, and that's a 3-hour-long gathering. So that's just important to know as you're doing the planning for a small group and promoting a small group, that you'll want to set aside time for that discernment retreat, as it is essential to the success of the program. Each of those subsequent 8 sessions are 2 hours long. Both the virtual and the in-person version. So those are 2-hour-long sessions. Between each of the gatherings, there will be weekly assignments like there are in all of our programs, whether they're readings from the books, spiritual practices you engage with, videos you watch, activities you do. So you can expect to engage with material outside of those weekly assignments in preparation for the upcoming gathering. There is an immersion experience, as Kristen talked about, again, earlier on in the program. So something else to be attentive to as you plan to implement the program in your community. This program, like all of our programs, are designed for small groups. So between 7 and 14 individuals, or 7 and 12 if you're meeting virtually. We find that that's the kind of sweet spot for a large enough group to engage with, to take action with, but not so large that you lose connection and that sense of trust among you. This program will be available in a virtual and an in-person format, so you can meet via Zoom or in person. As Kristen said, one of the things in that list of who this program is designed for was that you're in the same community or the same city. So if you are in the same physical space, you can still meet via Zoom if you need to. That is an option, but that's something to keep in mind, that you may want to be in person if possible. And then, as I said a moment ago, there are those weekly assignments between sessions. All sessions in this program are going to be a little bit different, but you can expect to have opening and closing prayers like the one we shared with you earlier. That was by Kristen Pitts, Reverend Kristen Pitts, the consultant for this program. And the prayers will guide you and center you on the material you'll be engaging with in that session to create that space of stillness and allow you to be present with one another, to feel God's Spirit among you and to engage with the material at hand. There'll be plenty of time for dialogues and activities where you can reflect on what you've learned from the weekly assignments and plan how you can implement that in your action plan. So expect to be able to share what you're learning with your group and to hear what they're learning and the wisdom they've gleaned as well. How to register. If you're interested in this program, as Kristen said, starting on Monday, this program will be available to the public, to you all, and you can register one of 2 ways. Right now, we currently have 2 different registration options available to you. The first is a group registration, which is $275. That gives your entire small group access to the program. Alternatively, you can use our individual registration process, where every individual pays a small fee on a sliding fee scale to participate in the program, and we waive that larger group registration fee. That individual registration model includes partial and full scholarships for anyone who needs financial assistance in order to participate in the program. We don't ever want that to be a barrier for entry for anyone. We have both of these registration options available, but in the coming months, we will be moving solely to that individual registration model, with the option of an organization still paying the cost of the program for participants via an invoice. And I'd be happy to speak more about that with anyone who has questions. The only additional cost is the cost of books per participant, and those can be purchased through Just Faith Ministries, rented from a local library, or however you like to get your books. You can then, once you register for the program, begin to dive into the material, begin planning, thinking through who would be good participants to take along with you through the journey. And you can decide what's an appropriate meeting format, whether that's in person or via Zoom. You could set details like the start date, the gathering place, identify who's going to facilitate the small group. We recommend having 2 facilitators per small group. These are not experts. You do not have to be an expert in organizing or advocacy work to be a facilitator. You just have to have some basic facilitation skills and a willingness to lead the small group using the materials and resources we provide for you. And then you'll begin thinking through who might be appropriate participants to join you in this journey. And I might say for this program, that's really even step 1. In some of our programs, that can be the final step of this process. But for this program, you're going to want to consider what communities you're involved with, what similar passions and concerns do you have, and really start there as you think through who you might invite to participate with you. So while it's listed last here on the slide, I'd encourage you to start thinking through that before even moving to registering and beginning the program experience. So with all that being said, I'm going to turn it back to Kristen. And before we jump into the Q&A, we're going to lead you through a power mapping exercise. And I mean, Kristen's going to lead you through it. So Kristen, I'll hand it back to you.
Taking a little bit of a risk here. We just thought we'd try something a little bit interactive today to give you all a taste of the program. Has anyone here ever done power mapping before? Oh, okay. Be a couple people. Awesome. Well, this is an activity that you will actually be doing a little bit later in the program. It doesn't come until session 6. So if there's some things that you don't quite understand or you don't know how to fill in, that's okay. When you get to this activity in the program, you'll know what to do, and you'll also be able to consult with your group because you'll be doing this together. So I invite you to take out your piece of paper. And the first thing that we're going to do is just imagine a social justice issue that you want to address and write it at the top of your paper. The very top of your paper. What is a social justice issue you would like to address? For example, this might be air pollution in my town, or it could be, as is with the case in Louisville, an overcrowded jail in my city. And if you can't think of one off the top of your head, I would recommend just going with air pollution in my town. It'll just give you a starting place. All right, thumbs up if you're ready for step 2. Okay, awesome. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to determine our quote unquote target. So who is the person who has power or influence over the justice concern we are seeking to address? Who's the person who has the power or influence over the justice concern we're seeking to address? I just want to say a couple of things before we proceed with the next steps, just something about the target. You want this person to be someone who really and truly has the power to create change, not somebody just symbolic, who really has the decision-making power, influence. And also, I think it's important to note that a lot of times we use this language, target. This is a term that organizers often use. And so to kind of mitigate confusion there, we stuck with this word, but we're really clear that there's this misconception that the target is an enemy who deserves our contempt. This is not true. It's absolutely crucial that we remember that all people, including our target, is created in the image of God and is worthy of our respect, always and no matter what. Sometimes our target might even want to work with us. And we a lot of times we make our own work harder just by assuming that they oppose our efforts. They might not. So as we continue in conversation, just something to note. So back to our instructions, determine who is our target in relationship to this issue. Who is the person who has the power or influence over this justice concern? And what you're going to do is write their name or in this very center of your paper. And yeah, I'll give you a couple minutes. Leela, if you wouldn't mind flipping to the next page, I have a little example slide here. So you can see here, my example was, we have some water pollution. We have a lot of water pollution in the Ohio River. And so my target at the very center there, you'll see, is the chemical plant CEO. So just think about your target right in the center. All right, and thumbs up if you are ready for the next step. Need one more second. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to map the influence of our target. So we're going to look at who has a connection with the person who's our target. And what we're going to do is write their names around the paper. And you can just be as thorough as possible. It can be all kinds of influences. You can include family, friends, religious affiliation, if they have clubs of any kind, any boards that they're on, coworkers, colleagues, just be as creative as possible. And Leela, if you want to flip to that next slide, and you can see some of the ideas that I had. Maybe, this person has a connection with their children's school, maybe the board of directors, a close friend from college, spouse, church, gym. Just around the target list there, any influences that might be on the target. All right, so our next step is to determine the relational lines. So what you'll do is you'll draw lines connecting the influencers that you wrote around your target, connect lines from your target to those influencers. So you'll see it kind of looks like spokes of a wheel, all these relational lines that are coming from the very middle. And the second thing that you'll do with that is you can draw relational lines between the influences. So maybe, for example, if the chemical plant CEO has a work colleague and they go to the same gym, you see here that there's a relational line between the gym and the work colleague. And maybe the work colleague, another work colleague goes there too. In the relationship, maybe there's a friendship between, or a coworker relationship between the assistant and another work colleague. You see all these relationships play out. And on your map, you might notice there's an area that has a more dense concentration of connections. This is what organizers call like a node of power. And this is somewhere that this may or may not indicate this is somewhere to spend our time. People, when they hear something from one person, that doesn't have much of a relationship with them, take it or leave it. But if it's coming from multiple people, they might take it into more consideration, especially if it's coming from folks that they know and trust. So nodes of power can be a great place to really make sure that prioritize our conversations and efforts. And then if we were doing this in the program, the next thing that your group would do would be to make a plan to allow these relationships to inform how you proceed in your advocacy, what conversations you will pursue next, and what actions you'll take. So Leela, if you go to the next slide. I hope this wasn't too confusing for you all. Again, it comes a little bit later in the program. So I hope that even if you didn't get to map out your entire map and there's some more thought that you can give it, hopefully it kind of gave you a sense for what this exercise is about. I'm wondering if anyone has any responses to either of these two questions, what you learned from this exercise, or how does power mapping influence how you understand power and how power operates? And feel free to come off mute or put your answer in the chat. I'll give you a minute to think about it if you like, or you can jump right in.
Hi, Kristen. This is Chris Condrat from Portland. I've done exercises like this with the, in our case, it's called MACG, but it's from the Foundation IAF. So I don't know if that's where you're getting this from. So it does work. The only thing that I was thinking with your example is tackling something that big that you had in your example with that number of people, in my opinion, isn't realistic. So what I did is I just did something really simple, like I want our parish to get an energy audit. The target would be the parish. To me, that's something more doable. I mean, a lot of these things we've already tried and started, but it's just, for the kind of thing that you had on there, the chemical plant, I'm sure it could start with that many people, but that's a huge undertaking. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just saying that's kind of a big example from I could see a community, but from like a parish might be kind of overwhelming.
Absolutely, Chris. That is a very, very good point. And that's something that we really emphasize throughout the program. And especially as people are creating their plans for proceeding forward for their 1 to 3 months after the program, is creating something that really is achievable for you. And there may be folks who are ready to take on this level of a project. You're right, this is not going to be most groups, but there could be folks who do have a larger base already ready. For example, one of our pilot groups was a homelessness coalition who already has like a wider base. And so they're already kind of base there. So something like this might actually be feasible for them, but you're absolutely right that for most groups, you would want it narrower.
Yeah. But you guys have, I wrote this in the chat, you guys have absolutely nailed it. I've been involved for 20 years in this work. I can see all the different pieces of what I've tried and done. And I personally have had a hard time selling other programs of yours, which I think are somewhat academic. I didn't do the big one. I thought it was too big, but I did 2 of the little ones. They're fine, but they still ended up without any action. I actually think this is doable, even without having taken a Just Faith, one of the other series. But you have absolutely nailed it. I love the fact that you were working with the Poor People's Campaign, which a lot of people don't know about. I was involved in the beginning. You've assembled a lot of the right stuff here. So I congratulate you on that.
Well, thank you, Chris. And I'll be really excited to hear what you think after having gone through the program. Thank you so much. That's great to hear. Anyone else, any feedback about this, like how this exercise went for you, or how maybe it made you think a little bit differently about how power operates?
We did get a comment from Frank in the chat in case anyone doesn't have access to that. It says, it helps to realize how people in power how people in power interconnect and are influenced by multiple sources.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Frank, I just did not do a great job reading your response, but exactly. Good thoughts there.
Yeah, thanks so much, Frank. That's a really, really good point. A lot of times when we think about advocacy, sometimes we think about just hounding a specific politician over and over and over again. But there are more, while that, sometimes that's effective and necessary, but there's also more creative ways that we can engage in advocacy and maybe be a little bit more effective about it. All right. Well, thank you so much for going through that activity with me. I hope it was somehow helpful for you all and gave you kind of a sense of what this program's about. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to Leela.
I did see Ed. Did you have something you wanted to add before you moved on?
Yeah, I wanted to add how you identify the issue you want to work on from the perspective of the people who it affects, who are suffering the injustice. And here in Portland, MACG originally was the Portland Organizing Project, and it did all these listening sessions before it came up with an idea.
Great.
So how does that fit in with this model?
Exactly. Yes, that is something that we do at the very, very beginning. And that's some of why the guest speaker and immersion experiences are at the beginning, to really start to make those connections and to have those conversations. People learn how to do one-on-ones with folks. And it seems like it's, intuitive to do a one-on-one, but to actually practice active listening and to seek out conversations with people who are affected by the issue and folks who are leaders from within communities that are affected by the issues they're seeking to address. That's something that they practice early on and is integrated into the action plan throughout. So continue with those relationships as folks are taking action. Does that answer your question, Ed?
Yeah, sort of.
Sort of. Solidarity is an important theme throughout, and that's something that our consultant has really helped us to in each session to ensure that there's some actionable steps about how we interact with that session's theme in terms of solidarity, how solidarity relates, and how we can take steps to ensure that we are working in solidarity rather than paternal relationships that are not helpful. So that's something that really is throughout the program. That's an important.
So I have another question. Matthew Desmond just published a book, Poverty, by America. And how do you, that's just this huge problem, right?
Right, absolutely.
And the problem he identifies is us in the haves who who keep the poor poor.
Mm-hmm.
How do you chunk that out so that you begin to address the justice issues and you don't just focus on charity?
Absolutely, and that's what this program is about, looking at the policies that keep people in poverty or experiencing injustice in whatever form it might be. So looking at those policies, and it really is a matter of there is the individual introspective spiritual piece of this that comes from not just working to take action out there, but also like spiritually asking what it means to truly be in solidarity, and what might it look like to live in a way that reflects gospel values. So that's part of this, and the Poor People's Campaign devotionals really help with that. We do have a series that is on poverty specifically, a 4-part series on poverty specifically. And one of the books that we read is Matthew Desmond's Evicted, book. And I haven't read his newest book yet, but I have read the New York Times article that came out recently. And so I'm really excited to dig into that book you mentioned.
Great, thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
I want to lift up a question that came through the chat and also invite anyone else to send other questions via the chat. Someone asked if these slides would be available to you all after our webinar today, and this person was specifically wanting to use them to promote the program and present it to their church. And yes, the answer is yes, they will be available to you. I'll send a follow-up email tomorrow morning. It will include the recording of today's event. It will include the slides, so you can use those to present to anyone who you might like to share this information with, as well as my contact information. So if you have follow-up questions, if you want to talk more about how this program may fit in your community, I'd be happy to speak with you further. And if need be, connect you with Kristen or another staff member who can answer any questions you might have.
And on that point, Leela, I might add, we do have a promotional kit that can really help you to guide you in reaching out to participants to be in this group. And so, Leela, maybe we could link that in the email.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll link that in the email, as Kristen said. So if you want to take a look at what resources are available there, you can click on it and explore a little more. Yes, Dorothy, I think I saw your hand there.
Is there any way, like at present, I'm not working with a group. Is there any way that you link some of us together in our locations in our areas? Otherwise, it's leaving it up to me to put a group together, and I don't have one at this time.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. We have talked some about that as a staff, if it would be possible to do one of this program on a national level where we pre-select the issue that folks can then, or maybe kind of the general area of interest that folks could then meet and organize around. And we have not, we haven't made a decision about whether we think that would be a wise decision or if that would be challenging to bring together folks who really aren't connected in any other way to take meaningful action. So I guess, Dorothy, my answer is possibly, and we're going to keep discerning that on staff. And some of that might be discerned through the feedback we receive through initial registrations to hear what worked, what didn't work, and learn if that would be a good option, because we don't ever want to offer something that's not going to set people up for success. So yeah, that's my short, long answer. Kristen, anything you want to add on that for now?
I think that's a good answer, Leela. This program is different from other programs where there's a little bit more flexibility in that. I would recommend if you do have groups that you are already connected with who might be like passionate or interested in a particular issue, like maybe you have a Sunday school class or like a small group that already exists, or like a group of friends who is passionate about something, or but just locally that just introduce this idea and maybe take it on together. It'd just be my suggestion. But yeah, we'll continue the conversation and yeah, be in touch about that.
Kristen, I've got another question in the chat for you. It's asking for you to share a little bit more about that discernment retreat. So you've shared that that's a time for the group to decide on a specific issue, but what are some other elements of that discernment retreat and how they go about choosing what to focus on?
Sure. The group is guided in a consensus building process where they start out by selecting, and there's like some pre-work that we ask folks to do before they arrive at the discernment retreat, but we ask folks to select a broader topic, and we give them sort of a list of topics and guide the facilitator in a consensus process about choosing something that the group is passionate about. And, folks have already prayed over this at this point. And then there's a next step in kind of narrowing the focus as much as is possible. And there'll be more opportunities to keep narrowing that focus, as Chris mentioned earlier, throughout the program. But during the discernment retreat, there's a process of going ahead and getting started in that. So that's a little bit of what the process is like. The discernment retreat is 3 hours. So it's not a full day thing, but if you want to block off more time for community building, that's certainly a possibility. And there's also time for prayer, reflection, and some get to know you activities if that is a need for your group.
Great, thank you, Kristen. Any other questions? If you prefer, feel free to unmute if that's easier for you, or send your questions via the chat. Okay, that might be it then. It has been great to gather with you all. As I said, I'll be sending a follow-up email. So if you have any other comments or questions, just reply directly to that email or pick up the phone and give me a call, and I'd be happy to chat more with you. We really appreciate you being here, appreciate your interest in the program. We want to equip the Just Faith community and beyond to take meaningful and effective action, and hope this program would be a significant tool for that. So thanks for being here. Thank you to Kristen and our consultants for this work, and we look forward to hopefully partnering with you in the future. Anything else from you, Kristen?
I think that's it. I'm just looking forward to being in solidarity with you all and taking action. Thanks so much.
Great. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Bye.